Well, no matter your views on the US president, his ability to remain calm and even amused after what looks like a third attempt on his life is pretty remarkable. The problem is he shouldn't have been put in that position again.
So Piers Morgan just delivered a masterclass in calling out America's security failures after what appears to be a third assassination attempt on Trump. This isn't partisan politics. This is about basic competence when the entire line of succession is at risk. Let's break down why he's absolutely right.
The Secret Service may have done a good job in safely shutting down the attack once it began, but the fact is the alleged gunman was able to breeze past security, arms to the teeth, and sprint toward a ballroom where everybody in the presidential line of succession pretty much was sitting. We then saw Vice President J.D. Vance and the president being bundled to safety before the whole of the cabinet and eventually the entire DC media was evacuated. Security has to be flawless for an event of this magnitude with zero exceptions.
This point about the entire line of succession being vulnerable cannot be overstated. We're talking about a potential constitutional crisis. If this had succeeded, the Speaker of the House would become president. That's not just a security failure, that's a threat to the continuity of government itself.
The gunman actually mocked the lax security in his twisted manifesto that he released a few minutes before the attack, writing, "This level of incompetence is insane," and pointing out that had he been an Iranian intent on doing something bad at that event, it could have been an awful lot worse. At best, this is embarrassing for the US. At worst, it's another catastrophic failure.
The manifesto detail is chilling. When your own attacker is mocking your security protocols in real time, you failed catastrophically. The Iranian reference isn't hypothetical either. They've had active bounties on Trump since the Soleimani killing. This exposes how vulnerable our government really is.
Well, and in a way, even worse, this guy had got a train from California to Washington and then just calmly booked himself into one of the Hilton hotel rooms where nobody had checked the fact that he was armed to the teeth. He had 2 guns on him when he made his attack. He had knives on him and so on. And he was even able, in his twisted manifesto, as I referenced earlier, to openly taunt the Secret Service. So much as I would give credit to the Secret Service for what they did once he made the attack in stopping him reaching the ballroom, the reality is he should never have been able to get as far as he did in the first place, armed in the way that he was.
2 guns, multiple knives, and he just casually booked a hotel room with no screening. This isn't 2001 anymore. We have facial recognition, weapons detection, threat databases. The fact that none of these systems caught an armed individual near the president is inexcusable institutional negligence.
And I just find it incredible that when you have a president as controversial as Donald Trump, and where it's obvious a lot of people hate him as much as like him, after 2 attempts on his life, one in Butler, Pennsylvania, where he got hit, and one on the golf course where I think it was miraculous that he didn't get killed that day either. The fact that this guy was able just to calmly book himself into a room on the Friday, the day before, and no one's checking that he is a potential attacker with loads of weapons, I find that just incredible.
3 attempts in 2 years. Butler, the golf course, and now this. Each time, basic security protocols failed. After Butler, we should have seen bulletproof reforms. Instead, we got the same vulnerabilities that nearly cost us a president. Pattern recognition should have prevented this.
And looked to me in the eye and I said, how dare you? You've caused so much division in this country pushing lies. We're not going to call it gaslighting anymore. You've lied to the people. How dare you do that?
Lake's confrontation with Tapper was exactly what journalism needed. When media figures spend years calling Trump a fascist and Hitler, then act surprised when someone tries to kill him, they've lost all credibility. Someone had to call out their complicity in creating this climate.
Now, I thought that was incredibly disingenuous by Norah O'Donnell for 2 reasons. One, of course, she was inferring that this had been said about President Trump. She knew that, he knew that, and it was just a ridiculous game she was playing to try and feign innocence. Oh, you think he was talking about you? But secondly, I was trying to think, if that had been Obama or Biden or any of the Democrat presidents in particular, would she have read out these incredibly defamatory comments? And the truth is, I don't think she would have done. So there is one rule for Trump in their eyes and one for everybody else. So on that, I'm with you completely.
The double standard is glaring. Imagine if someone read defamatory comments about Obama or Biden on air after an assassination attempt. CBS would never do it. But with Trump, they pile on even after he's nearly murdered. This isn't journalism. It's activist hatred masquerading as news.
You know, again, noticeable that he didn't mention President Trump by name, and also that he claimed not to have any information about potential motive, when in fact, several hours before he posted that, we'd had all the contents of this twisted manifesto, which made it pretty clear what his motivation was.
Obama's silence speaks volumes. When Gabby Giffords was shot, he gave a unifying speech within hours. When police officers are killed, he's immediately on Twitter. But when Trump nearly dies, suddenly he needs more information? That's not leadership. That's calculated political cowardice.
Jack Posobiec, the problem here is if you look at this twisted manifesto of this latest shooter, Cole Allen, described by people who knew him as a near genius. He was a teacher who'd recently won awards. Everyone seemed to like him and so on. He wasn't a natural red flag person where you'd look at him and think, well, he's got criminal convictions and history of violence or any of that. None of that appeared to be there. Seems to have been a brilliant mind, poisoned, it would appear, by propaganda from the left. I mean, a lot of the language used in his manifesto is the language of the hard left against Trump. And there's no denying that. I mean, I'm not going to say that only the left commit acts of violence. They don't. The right has done just as much, actually, in the last 30 years. But I do think on this occasion, there's no doubt this supposedly brilliant mind had that mind warped by whatever he was hearing about Trump, including Hitler references and so on.
This profile is terrifying. A brilliant educator, well-liked, award-winning, then suddenly radicalized into attempted murder. When respected teachers are being turned into assassins by left-wing rhetoric comparing Trump to Hitler, we've crossed into genuinely dangerous propaganda territory that creates killers.
And I've warned for a while that if you continually say that Trump is Hitler or Stephen Miller is Hitler or whatever, whoever it is, then to a deranged mind, eventually they're going to think they're doing a public service and a duty by killing the new Hitler. Why wouldn't they? So I do think language really matters. So what do you say to people like Jojo who think that the comments of Kimmel about Melania Trump having the glow of an expectant widow, they're just a comedian being a comedian?
Look, Piers, we've been
Exactly right about the Hitler comparisons. When you tell people Trump is literally Hitler for 8 years, eventually someone believes you and thinks they're saving democracy by killing him. Kimmel's expectant widow joke wasn't comedy. It was incitement disguised as entertainment.
But Mark Lamont Hill, one thing that immediately began to happen were an extraordinary number of people on social media immediately saying this was fake, it was a false flag operation, it was staged, people just repeating the word staged. I think Jojo alluded to this in some of her social media posts. I mean, surely you don't think that anything that happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was set up or staged, do you?
The immediate false flag conspiracy theories are just as dangerous as the incitement. When people can't accept that political violence is real, they can't address the causes. These aren't crisis actors. These are real bullets, real blood, and real threats to democratic stability.
Brandon, it seems to me a stain on everyone's houses. There's been increasingly incendiary rhetoric in American political discourse now for many years from the left and the right. You know, everyone is culpable in this area, I think. I think it's disingenuous of people on the right to say it's just the crazy lefties. I think it's disingenuous of people on the left to deny they're doing it and then to pretend that none of their side do it. Everyone's been doing this. The rhetoric's got increasingly unpleasant, nasty, violent, fractious, divisive, polarizing, and inevitably, in a country with over 400 million weapons, firearms, you're going to get unhinged people who take it in their own hands to exact their warped form of justice, which is they think, oh, well, this guy's the new Hitler. I've got to try and kill him. They're all Hitler. They're all Nazis. We've got to kill them. You know, I understand the warped mindset. If you keep being told someone's Hitler, then eventually you're going to take out Hitler as a public service.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. I'll push back on another point, but I do think people need...
The both sides analysis is spot on, but the Hitler rhetoric specifically creates a moral permission structure for violence. When you convince people they're fighting the next Holocaust, assassination becomes a moral imperative in their minds. With 400 million guns, that rhetoric literally kills.
We should agree collectively that we are no longer going to view attacks on politicians if it's someone from the other side, right? People are no longer going to take an immediate position, oh, it must be faked, it must be staged.
Piers.
And secondly, the jokes about, wait a minute, Brandon. And jokes about political violence or about Trump being dead and his wife being a glowing widow, whatever, given there have been 2 attempts in his life before that joke was made, should be ruled actually unacceptable. That actually it's not funny, nothing that encourages the idea of dead politicians. I was out the other night at the Time 100 gala and I sat with Senator Mark Kelly and with Gabby Giffords. And I remember when Gabby Giffords got shot and very nearly killed. And it was a reminder to me that political violence, whatever side you're on, is completely unacceptable. And rhetoric about political violence should be completely unacceptable. And I've seen it on both sides.
Here's where I
and I
disagree,
also
Piers.
think calling out attacks and incidents involving politicians where you
Piers.
take a view because it's not your
Piers.
side, I
Piers.
think is wrong.
This moral leadership is exactly what's needed. Gabby Giffords nearly died from this same toxic climate. The human cost is real. Ask her husband Mark Kelly what political violence does to families. When basic decency becomes controversial, we've lost our way as a civilized society.
Stop joking about politicians dying or being killed. Stop questioning and querying that they're staged when they're obviously not. And stop glorifying in rhetoric political violence at all. I think they would be 3
Piers.
really good starting places for
May I
how we try
respond
and
now?
move on.
3 simple rules that should be common sense. Stop joking about dead politicians. Stop crying false flag. Stop glorifying violence. The fact that this needs to be said shows how far we've fallen. This isn't about left or right anymore. It's about basic human decency.